This is a call toward what has been called the Great Way, the pathless path, the fireless flame, the gateless gate where no foot has ever stepped, the way of the ancients, the great work of inner alchemy. The turning of attention not toward something to be seen, but toward that which sees. It is the descent into the silence of being, where the seeker, the search, and the sought burn away in the holy fire of unknowing. This is the direct way to Samadhi, not a thing to grasp, but the slipping away of all that could grasp. It is waking from the dream of being a someone, the end of pretending to be a character in the story you never wrote. Who remains when the thought I am dissolves into the ocean of what has no name? At some point on our human journey, a desire to know oneself arises. A longing not for another experience, not for pleasure or distraction. It is a call to awaken, and beyond awakening, to liberation. This longing transcends culture, age, and time. It is the same spark that ignited in the heart of the Buddha, Patanjali, Nagarjuna, and Jesus, that whispered to the desert mystics, that blazed in the hearts of the Sufi lovers. Underneath the words, customs, and practices of all religions that follow the perennial path, there is an essential unity, one sadhana, one universal dharma by which humanity evolves. It is only egoic consciousness and ignorance of our true nature that creates separation. The impulse to awaken can be born of suffering, or it can be born of wisdom and insight. In either case, there is an abandoning of all that is false, fleeting, conditioned, and to find out directly who and what one is. The ancient Sanskrit word sadhana refers to the means of realization, the path, the practice. True sadhana is not something you do to get somewhere else. It's not a checklist, a technique, or something to add to a spiritual identity. Sadhana, in its purest form, is the flowering of being into form. It may begin with preliminary techniques, breathwork, mantra, meditation, but these are stepping stones, initial preparations, not the destination. True sadhana is not about adding more to your life. It is about undoing, shedding the layers of false identity. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj said, "You must be serious, earnest, burning with one desire to find what is true. Without this fire, you will only play with words." Millions have watched the Samadhi films, but for most, it's just that, a film, entertainment for the mind, another concept to collect. Few are willing to do what it takes. Few are willing to die before they die. Few are willing to sit in the fire and not reach for the exit. These are the two knots that limit the sense of I to the conditioned self. The body craves comfort. The mind craves control. True sadhana requires two things: a willingness to go beyond comfort and a willingness to not know. Liberation lives on the other side of both. We begin with the impulse to break free from illusion and realize our true nature. The ego, the conditioned self, hears the call to awaken and responds. I will do it. I will meditate, fast, practice. But the egoic mind misunderstands this impulse. It feels it has to do something, not realizing that it has to burn in the fire of presence. It has to give up control, to give up following a script, because the egoic mind is the script, the knowing that is conditioned or learned, and it is always trying to achieve something. It always wants something other than what is. To give the ego the job of becoming liberated is like making the criminal the chief of police. The dissatisfied character wants out of prison, and it makes it a mission to become liberated. But in fact, it is the prison. You were never in prison. The whole thing is a case of mistaken identity. The greatest trick of the ego is not its noise, but its disguise. It sets fire to the house, then runs in dressed as the fireman. It steals your freedom, then parades as the savior who will restore it. This is why the search goes on endlessly. The very one who claims it will deliver liberation is the one who does not want it. For if freedom is found, the impostor vanishes. And so the criminal guards the keys, conducts the investigation, pretends to pursue the truth, but all the while it is protecting itself. To see this clearly is the beginning of true sadhana. To recognize that the seeker itself is the lie. And the self has never been bound, never needed rescue. The mask of the chief falls and the criminal dissolves. Only awareness remains. Simple, still, unhidden. Find out who and what you are. Who am I? This film will not answer that question, but it will point you to the silence where all questions and answers end. It will point you to dissolve the questioner and to release the need for conditioned answers. The purpose of sadhana is to directly realize who and what you are. Directly means not via the conditioned mind. Sadhana is whatever brings you to stillness of mind, whatever leads to the cessation of the I thought and the cessation of pathological thinking. In the beginning, we may imitate the techniques, practices, and lifestyle of realized beings, just as an artist first copies the masters. But to become a true artist of being, you must become a hollow flute, empty of effort, played by the wind of the self. Your movement comes not from watching an instructional yoga video, but one is moved by the energy of life itself. Ethics are not imposed. They are inevitable when you see clearly how suffering arises from false identity. True sadhana is not imitation. It is not borrowed. It does not come from memory. It is the energy and innate intelligence that flows from presence. In the world of modern yoga, posture has become performance, a choreography of effort, downward dog, cobra pose, warriors saluting the sun. But in the ancient yoga of the sages, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, posture was barely a footnote, not an art of contortion, but a portal into stillness. Patanjali says simply, sthira sukhamasanam. Posture is that which is stable and comfortable. That's it. You do not need a perfect lotus. You do not need to fold like origami. The only requirement is that the body is quiet enough not to steal the show. If the body aches, attention will return again and again to pain. But this too can be practice. Awakening is possible even in agony. What you truly are is untouched. Whatever seems to stand in the way is the way. Primordial awareness was never the body, not its posture, nor its breath. On the relative level, it helps to stretch. It helps to loosen the coils so you can sit longer, breathe deeper, open the subtle channels of prana. It helps to befriend the breath. Breath is a bridge from the outer world of form to the inner sanctum of formlessness. But on the absolute level, it doesn't matter at all. The self was never stiff. Awareness has no knees. Enlightenment is not a circus trick. It's not posture. It's not in the spine. It's not even in the breath. It is the one who watches all postures come and go. What you are is prior to posture, prior to breath, prior to thought. Rest in that. Most of what passes for sadhana is still movement in the dream, more doing for the mind, more fuel for the one who seeks. It builds a new persona, a spiritualized ego, wearing malas instead of jewelry, chanting mantras instead of gossiping, chasing silence instead of noise. But chasing is chasing, becoming is becoming, whether clothed in business attire or in robes. It is still the same dream of acquisition. The ego cannot do true sadhana, for it does not want to end. It only wants to trade masks from worldly to holy, from ordinary to enlightened. The body-mind can react to sadhana in different ways. It may generate hindrances such as tiredness, craving or aversion, restlessness, worry, doubt, expectation, and generally wanting something other than what is. The ego construct may feel like it is dying, and this may generate fear. It may cling to beliefs or make up stories to halt the process. A hindrance is only a hindrance when you identify with the appearances in the mind, shadows mistaken for substance. Don't believe your thoughts. Doubt and certainty, pleasure and pain, right and wrong, good and bad, all just thoughts. The mind is always evaluating, measuring. Don't push away or suppress thoughts, just see them as passing clouds. The mind will object. We need thinking. You can't just drop it. It's what makes us human. No one said thinking ends. The illusion that ends is ownership of thoughts. Find out who you are beyond thinking. After awakening, thoughts still happen. Plans still form. The body remembers how to drive a car. Taxes still get filed. Groceries still get bought. The child still gets hugged. But who is the doer? There is doing, but no doer. Thinking, but no thinker. The dream continues, but you no longer mistake yourself for the dreamer. The mind becomes a tool again, not a tyrant, a servant, not the master. As it lets go of control, the ego construct may feel like it is dying, and this may generate fear. It may cling to beliefs or make up stories to halt the process, to feed that fear, to feed what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body. As we stay in the now, remaining equanimous, remaining okay with what is, the hindrances become doorways to deeper aliveness. When attention turns inward, the emotional body may begin to speak. Each emotion carries within it the echo of an incomplete experience, a moment in which the body resisted what was, where a little I was born to protect, to survive. Emotions are composites of thoughts and sensations. Every emotion is a thought plus sensation. Consider anger. A thought appears. They shouldn't have said that. And almost immediately, fire rises in the belly, tightness in the jaw, a clench in the chest. The mind spins stories, but these are just old circuits firing. This is conditioning, echoing through the body-mind. The practice is not to suppress or fix, but to feel directly. Stay with the raw energy before the mind names it. Bring presence to the burn, not the story. Burn in it. Burn in the now. As awareness touches the charge without identification, something miraculous occurs. The scaffolding of belief begins to loosen. The thought dissolves. The identity tethered to it crumbles. And what remains is pure energy, unclaimed, unbound, unburdened. In this intermediary form of sadhana, emotions become portals. Anger becomes fire. Grief becomes depth. Fear becomes alertness. Each transmuted into aliveness, divine current, no longer chained to a me. And as the I-thought loses its grip, energy becomes free of the old patterns. Bliss, even rapture, can arise. This too is a stage, and if we cling to any state, any phenomena, we slow the clearing process. Most people give up when it gets uncomfortable. The difference between your average person and liberated beings is that the liberated being remains with I-amness, letting go of comfort and discomfort, letting go of knowing. They are willing to burn continuously in the now. Going to battle with the hindrances is like mistaking a rope for a snake in the dark. Every reaction is driven by that mistake, but then the lamp is lit. You see it clearly, only a rope, and instantly the fear drops away. The struggle dissolves. The snake was never there. In the same way, when attention returns to its source, the illusion of separation is seen for what it is. The reactions, the struggle, they fall away naturally. Awakening is not conquering the dream. It is not about fighting the snake. It is recognizing the dream as dream, and in that recognition the burden lifts. The rope is simply a rope. Life is simply life. Peace is what remains. Joseph Campbell said, "Where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a God, and where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence." What we have pushed away into the unconscious, demonized, and turned into other, is actually a part of ourselves. The idea of conquering the serpent is based on the old dualistic, egoic consciousness. When energy is freed from these old fears, beliefs, and concepts, we integrate the dragon, the unconscious, and it becomes our power within the dream of life. The ego says, what about suffering, famine, war, injustice, greed, inequality? The world is far from perfect, and we have to fix it. We have to fight against evil. Hegel said evil resides in the very gaze, which perceives evil all around itself. The so-called external world is simply a mirror, and whatever you see in the mirror shows you where your attachments are, where there is distortion. To be awake is to realize the one source everywhere, to view every part of creation as a reflection of the one. Every branch, leaf, and fruit reveals some aspect of the great perfection. To allow what is, to love what is liberation. To resist what is suffering. The so-called hindrances are not to be resisted. They are not interruptions to your sadhana. They are your sadhana. What stands in the way is the way. Just see what is arising. Just abide as the seer, and something remarkable happens. you will find out who was struggling, who was tired, who experienced fear, pain, doubt, anxiety. Find out who struggles. Consciousness does not struggle. It simply is. Whatever shadow comes up from the depths, it is coming up to be set free. Invite it. Love. To love is simply to be one with. Love every part of yourself, without labeling one part good, another bad. Invite all parts of yourself home to be integrated in loving awareness. Some on the pathless path are like dry wood. A single spark of truth, and they erupt into flame. The little self vanishes in a flash, and only the fire of being remains. Others are still green, moist with identity, heavy with concepts. They require kindling, techniques, devotion, bridges of breath and form to soften the resistance. There is no judgment in this. Green wood is not wrong. It is simply not yet ready to vanish in the blaze. Even the wettest log eventually surrenders to the fire that has no opposite. Some who are drawn to engage in sadhana are able to intuit the direct pointers right away. For others, an intermediary step opens the door. There are always two possible paths, the path of suffering and the path of wisdom. Sometimes life itself will interrupt the pattern of you, forcing submission, and it is possible to come to realization in this way. Sometimes life will bring the character to its knees, creating an opening. This is the path of suffering. The path of wisdom is learning to consciously surrender. Sadhana before awakening requires a total effort to surrender one's beliefs and preferences, and a willingness to enter into continuous practice, to create conditions of no escape for the ego, to make attention single-pointed, to realize deep inner surrender. Before awakening, it starts as something conditioned or learned with the mind. A technique that may bring one person to clarity and presence may become a prison for another if they attach their identity to it. Such practices are like a thorn to remove a thorn. The thorn, the technique, only seems to be necessary so long as you believe you are bound. So long as you believe you are the character, the conditioned self. Sadhana is not about adding more to your life. It is not about adding any new conditioning. It is not about doing, but it is about wei wu wei, doing not doing. Every tradition, every teacher, every pointer that follows the perennial teaching starts by pointing attention away from Maya, away from thoughts, to bring attention into the now. Every technique or practice is to bring about less thinking, less doing, until we come to being. An intermediary practice involves placing attention on something that is here now. The breath, a sound, a sensation in the body, something undeniable, immediate, alive. Stay with it single-pointedly. Feel how it changes. Every meditation object is a doorway, and if you follow it faithfully, it will carry you beyond itself. from form to vibration, from matter to energy. Energy is the bridge. Breath leads to energy, and energy leads home. In every tradition, the breath has been the meeting point of spirit and matter. Prana in Sanskrit, Ruach in Hebrew, the divine wind that animates all life. As attention becomes absorbed in this living current, the traditions describe stages of meditative absorption, the jhanas of Buddhism, the dhyana states of yoga, the inner mansions of Saint Teresa's interior castle, and the stages of Samadhi found in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Each represents a deepening intimacy with the subtle reality of being, stages where conditioning and illusion fall away one layer at a time, where thought subsides, energy becomes radiant, single-pointedness and equanimity become unshakable. The senses withdraw from their objects. The world grows quiet. The body becomes light, transparent, suffused with bliss. Single-pointedness and equanimity become stronger until there is no more resistance to what is. In Samadhi, the resistance, the I-thought is dropped, and you become one with the meditation object, one with the breath, the sensations, the sound, all become the changing field of life energy. The questioning mind has gone silent. Questions no longer arise. The Buddha described his night of enlightenment. The body and mind were tranquil, still as a moonlit lake. A great energy arose, tireless, unwavering, and attention became one continuous flame. No desire stirred, no aversion shadowed the mind. The 5 hindrances had fallen away like old skins. There was a profound ease, a quiet rapture blooming from within, a joy untouched by circumstance. And as the mind gathered itself into deeper absorption, an inner light dawned, a clarity vast and unshakable. Joy gave way to serenity. The current of bliss refined itself into stillness. Then even that joy, even that light, was relinquished. The mind moved beyond the field of opposites, beyond the labeling of pain and pleasure, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. There all distinctions were silenced. The last ripple of becoming subsided. The world stopped, and in that stillness the unborn was seen, not as something gained, but as what had never been lost. No Buddha awakened that night, only awakening itself. Timeless, without owner, shining through the man who had ceased to be a man. The Bodhi tree is not made of bark or leaves. The Bodhi tree is within you. It is the spine of light, the Sushumna, the channel of prana, from root to crown, where the serpent rises and the self remembers. Every tradition speaks of it, the tree of life, the world tree, the axis mundi, the central channel, the silent pillar that connects heaven and earth. It is represented in the ancient traditions as the Nagas or Kundalini Shakti. It is the bridge to the one mind, the Logos, that extends from the microcosm to macrocosm, the conscious intelligent energy mind that flows through all of nature and the entire manifested world. At the base, the root, survival, time, matter. At the crown, the infinite silence, eternity. In ancient Egypt, they called it the Djed pillar. The Djed is the spine of Osiris. It is your own spine, your own forgotten axis. To raise the Djed is to awaken the light trapped in matter, to return to the eternal. In the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, it says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. The cross is not just a symbol of suffering, it is the axis where opposites meet. The cross is the Bodhi tree in disguise. Just as the Buddha sat beneath the tree and vowed not to rise until illusion was pierced, so too did Christ surrender on the cross. This is where Buddhism and Christianity touch, the total surrender of the ego, the realization that the I cannot escape, and in that surrender, grace dawns. Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, and John of the Cross each entered into profound states of absorption, what they called religious ecstasies. In their language, these were not escapes from the world, but transformations of perception. The ego falls away, the senses withdraw from their objects. The soul is caught up in light, spirit, or energy. In Teresa's interior castle, the spirit moves through 7 mansions, each one a finer vibration of love, each one a step closer to union with the beloved. The Sufi mystics whirl in the same current and call it fana, the dissolution of self in the wine of divine love. The Kabbalists ascend the tree of life. The yogis enter Samadhi. The Buddhists describe jhana. Different languages, the same journey inward. The outer forms differ, but each practice is a refinement of attention itself. Religious ecstasies, jhanas, or intermediary samadhi states are part of the phenomena of the pathless path, not something to cling to and not something to push away. In these powerful merging experiences, sometimes the higher mind will create a scene, or you could say a communication from spirit. But for others, the experience may be energetic. Energy rises, the heart opens. The illusion of separateness burns away until the soul no longer prays to God, but as God. Until there is no longer saint or sinner, seeker or sought, only the radiant silence that all traditions point toward and none can claim. The mind may ask, how does one progress through these stages of jhana or dhyana? Stay with your meditation object so single-pointedly that it changes into something else. Don't keep changing the object of your meditation. Don't chase new methods, new mantras, new teachers. Pick one thing, one gate, and go all the way through it. If you keep digging shallow wells, you'll never reach water. One well, dug deeply, will give you the living spring. Whether you place your attention on the breath, on changing sensations, on the sound of Om, on the name of God, on the feeling of I am. Stay there. Keep returning. Every distraction is just the mind offering you another patch of earth to dig. You come face to face with your pain, your delusion, all that was pushed away and split off. Yet underneath, the same water waits. At first, the digging is hard. The soil of habit, thought, and emotion resists the spade. But if you stay, if you keep your attention steady, the ground begins to soften. Deeper still, you'll strike the living current. Not created, but already there, waiting beneath the noise of the mind. The taste of that water is the same in every tradition. The breath becomes radiant. The mantra vibrates through every cell. Presence dances, alive as resonance. The object and the observer dissolve. What do you find when you excavate? You find old pain, unconscious patterns of old resistance. Learn to accept, even love that pain. Drop all resistance, drop all knowing, and the knots that bind the conditioned self release. To allow the very pain the ego wants to get rid of is the offering that allows the heart to open and alchemy to unfold. Not everyone experiences energy the same way. The Buddha himself described Sukhavipassaka, dry insight workers, as legitimate paths to liberation. For some temperaments, especially those with sharp discernment and natural equanimity, this works beautifully. They see directly into impermanence and non-self. They don't need mystical fireworks. However, it is important to understand, without the heart's softening and the nervous system's integration, dry insight meditation, or vipassana meditation, can become a spiritual bypass in disguise. Authentic vipassana ripens into a moist insight, one soaked in compassion, energy, and embodied presence. When the seeing is complete, the whole organism participates. Body, heart, breath, and awareness unified. That's what the Buddha meant when he said, wisdom and concentration are yoked together like two hands washing each other. Here one may experience light, vibration, a sense of expansion, bliss, luminosity, and love. If there is any trace of attachment, any trace of a preference to one experience over another, one state over another, then the I thought remains alive. The liberated one goes beyond the bridge, letting go of the vehicle, the technique, the doing, the intention. What remains is Sat Chitananda, not three things, but one indivisible reality. Sat, pure being, that which never changes. Chit, pure consciousness, the knowing that is self-luminous. Ananda, not pleasure or excitement, but a primordial dimension of bliss that becomes visible when being knows itself as being. Satchitananda is not experienced. It is the ground of all experience. The mystics call it God's love. It does not come and go. It was never absent. The wave cries out, "I want to return to the ocean." But the ocean whispers, "You never left. As the mind becomes more and more still, we become more available for the truth. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or Turiya in deep sleep, is a byproduct of intensive sadhana. When the primordial ground of being awakens to itself, we discover truly who and what we are. That which remains even in deep sleep, when mind and body have dropped off. The end of mental fantasy, the end of distortion, the filter drops, the reducing valve of perception ceases to narrow reality. What remains is the vastness that was always here, shining through the breath, through the body, through the ordinary moment. Awareness, no longer looking for a path, because it is the path. Just this. Only this. You wore the mask for so long, you forgot it was made of thoughts, of memories, desires, resistances, fears, of sensations, feelings, fabrications, made of the 5 skandhas, dancing in a loop, casting a spell called me. But who were you before the loop began? You are not the mask. You are not an actor behind it. You are not even the watcher of the actor. Intend to directly experience who you are, not using the mind or thought. The I thought is the first lie, and from it the whole dream of becoming was born. All suffering, all seeking, phantoms swirling around a ghost. But the dream ends the moment you stop believing your thoughts. Awakening isn't a spiritual sticker on your ego, it's the funeral of who you thought you were. Even after glimpsing their true nature, most go back to the script, back to the loop, back to the mechanical life, because facing what's underneath means letting the whole house of cards fall. This is not about beliefs, not about being spiritual, not about becoming someone. This is about unbecoming, about removing the mask you didn't even know you were wearing. Sri Ramakrishna stated that only 2 kinds of people can attain self-knowledge. Those who are not encumbered at all with learning, that is to say, whose minds are not overcrowded with thoughts borrowed from others, and those who, after studying all the scriptures and sciences, have come to realize that they know nothing. On the surface, humanity has made unimaginable progress. We've split the atom, invented quantum computers, connected the planet with invisible threads of information. But inwardly, in the heart, in the places where craving, aversion, fear, anger, and violence live, little has changed. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha spoke of dukkha, which is the feeling of chronic unsatisfactoriness generated by the I thought. Back then, humanity experienced suffering born out of craving and aversion, and humans were ignorant of their true nature. Now, 2,500 years later, we scroll through news of war, greed, lying, and hatred. In truth, Humanity's outer evolution has done nothing to advance liberation. It is the same shadow wearing a new face. What holds the wheel of samsara in place, the wheel of suffering? What engine powers this samsaric machine? The ego, the imposter, the false I, the clever mimic. The mask you forgot was a mask. It says I want. It says I know. It says I must become. Dukkha. To see directly the unsatisfactoriness of the mind. To see that what you have become identified with, the character with its preferences, is simply a pattern of resistance to what is. We have been taught since birth to seek comfort, to seek pleasure, avoid pain, secure our little patch of certainty in a world of flux. We build fortresses of routine, of beliefs, of self-image, not knowing that these very defenses are the bars of our prison. We call it normal. But this normal is mechanical, robotic, the sleepwalk of the herd, unconsciously following the inherited script. To seek your bliss in the outer world is to wander forever through a desert mirage. Now, here is the paradox, the part that the ego won't want to accept. The world is perfect as it is. The ego recoils at that statement. The ego is resistance to what is. The I thought is born of resistance. The I thought is not a single thing. It is not a noun. It is not a person. It is not even a thought in the ordinary sense. The I thought is a pattern, a constellation of contractions, micro-resistances woven together into the illusion of a center. It is literally a branching structure of tension, a fractal of no against the flow of what is. It is the architecture of mind itself, and if you learn to look deeply, you see the same geometry everywhere. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. Every pattern of resistance is a small I. Every I is a knot. The knots together form the mind, and the mind forms the world as you experience it. In sadhana, we turn attention toward the self. At first, what we see is the false self, the false I, our conditioning. Even the one moving attention is revealed to be impermanent. All beings who have awakened and become liberated have realized their human conditioning to be empty of self. In the Heart Sutra, it says that the awakened one realized all 5 skandhas, all 5 mind processes, to be empty of self, empty of the I thought. The awakened one, doing deep self-inquiry, abiding directly in awareness, realized all dimensions of the mind to be empty of self. To directly see the skandhas as they arise is to pierce the illusion of self. The I thought is entangled with the sense of being the bodily form, made of constantly changing sensations, perceptions, thoughts, feelings, preferences towards what is arising, and the sense that there is a separate witness of all of that changing phenomena. The first skandha, rupa, or form, refers to identification with the body. We think we are the body, but when we investigate, we find that the body is empty of self. It is just a mass of changing vibrations. The body is not what we think it is. When you observe the body with clarity, not through memory, not through labels, but directly, what do you find? Not a solid thing, not a continuous identity, just a field of sensations rising and falling, appearing and disappearing, a flickering dance of heat, pressure, ache, pulse, pleasure, pain. Nothing in it stays. Nothing in it is you. The mind clings to the image of the body, calls it me, and suffers when it fades. But what if you looked again without the story? What if you investigated every inch of this flesh and found only change? Anicca, impermanence. To experience impermanence directly, not just conceptually, is an important step in one's sadhana. What then is the self? We don't settle for theory. Concepts will not satisfy. We look, investigate directly. We observe the body, the breath, the senses, until it becomes clear. Everything you're aware of is not the one who is aware. And so we continue, past sensation, past memory, past mind, to discover that which does not come and go. The second skandha, Vedana, is the field of changing phenomena itself, or the pranic field which is at the root of our senses, the subtlest phenomena perceivable. At the beginning of sadhana, in all forms of meditation where one has a meditation object, by staying with the meditation object, one comes to this field of changing vibration or inner energy. By keeping attention on this changing field, observing the subtlest raw sensation, you could say that one clears, purifies, or burns up old conditioning, attachments, and loosens identification with the body-mind. Every meditation object, whether it is the breath, a mantra, the third eye, the hara, or lower dantian, or other object, takes you to the field of change if you stay with it continuously, not reacting to pain or pleasure, remaining equanimous with all that is arising. Who is ready to burn? Not tomorrow, not after one more retreat, now or never. Naming is the beginning of separation and violence, the beginning of the I thought. To name something is to separate it from what it truly is. We cast spells with words, literal spelling, and the more we describe the world, the more we dwell in a mirror maze of thought, reflecting reflections. Each label draws attention away from what is, the raw, unfiltered, ever-present reality, and toward the phantom realm of abstraction. As Søren Kierkegaard said, "If you name me, you negate me." Naming is the beginning of separation, tree, sky, God, self, love. Then a perception of some thing is created, something separate from me. Attention goes to the concept, to the thought, to the memory, to the sense that I know. Who is this I that knows? This is the third skandha, sanya, which is the mind process which creates the perception of things. The part of the mind that separates one thing from another through language, bringing about the dualistic world, self and other, this and that, through memory, language and concepts. Language is not innocent. It does not merely describe the world. It constructs the world you believe you see. Before your eyes even land on a shape, the mind leaps forward with a name, a category, a story. You never meet the thing itself. You meet the label that covers it. The word becomes a veil drawn over the raw luminosity of existence. We don't perceive life directly. We perceive our concepts of life. The infinite squeezed through the narrow doorway of a single thought. And as Carl Jung said, we do not even meet one another. We meet our projections. We see anima, animus, shadow, archetype, the myth-soaked furniture of the psyche, not the living being in front of us. We never meet our mother or father, only the words and the stories wrapped around them. We never meet our lover, only the inner image we cast upon them. We never meet ourselves, only the narrative we inherited. The mind knows the tree. It knows its name in Latin, its place in the family of plants, its uses, its functions, its category. It knows the data, the age of the bark, the height, the moisture content of its leaves. But this knowing is the shadow of knowing. When you are still, when you are empty, when the filters of thought fall away, in Samadhi you meet the tree. You become the tree. Or rather, the illusion of separation falls away. In this state, you do not learn the tree's facts. You learn its secrets, not conceptually, but directly. It tells you things that no book has ever recorded. In shamanic lineages, this is known. They say the plants have songs. The mountains whisper. The river speaks, but only to those who have forgotten their name. You meet yourself. You meet another directly because self and other have fallen away. The Bible describes the mythic beginning of duality. Adam names the animals. Naming creates a separation, and then we form preferences towards the objects we name. These preferences toward this and that are the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree of duality, the inner branching patterns that form the I thought. The advent of structured language was a spiritual fracture point. It allowed us to conceptualize being, which simultaneously removed us from it. Once we began naming, we no longer saw. This is echoed in Zen, where the master strikes the student the moment they try to explain. This shift is the completion of what some call the fall. In Gnostic myth, the fall is not moral, it is ontological. It has to do with the fundamental nature of being or existence. A fall into separation. The true return is not a return to the primitive, but a conscious transcendence of the intellect. Evolution is integral, not a negation of what came before, but transcendence that includes the previous stages. The rational mind is not abandoned, but we realize what is beyond pathological, ego-oriented thinking. To awaken is to undo the naming. to see beyond the veil of language and to return attention to its source. Before the mind divides, before the thought, "I am this or that," arises, there is only the pure presence of being. It is not yours or mine. It is not the property of any one religion, spiritual tradition, or sadhana system. It has no name, but it is, and it knows itself not through thought, but through being. This is the invitation to look again without the name, to touch life without the glove of language, without the knowing I or the I thought. It is this I that keeps the war alive. It is this I that teaches the child to fear, the lover to grasp, the mind to divide. The mind separates one thing from another, creating objects, and then forms preferences or attachments to those objects. Those preferences are the fourth skandha, sankharas in Pali, or samskaras in Sanskrit, or conditioned patterns of craving and aversion. The mind says, "I like, I don't like. This is good, this is bad." It is constantly evaluating what is arising. Who is this I that forms preferences towards the things that it knows? In daily life, the samskaras are everywhere. In the checkout line, in the parking lot, in the fight with your partner, in boredom or anxiety, compulsive activities, endless entertainment, snacking and going after the next sweet or salty taste. Find out what is keeping the I thought alive in daily life. What do you reach for? What do you resist? What makes you move? What are you pursuing in the matrix of the conditioned mind? The so-called external world that you believe will bring you fulfillment. That's your real teacher. Krishnamurti said, "The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence." When we let everything be, without the preferences of the conditioned I, then we see the world, not through the filters of past conditioning, past experiences, thoughts, and memories, but we experience the world directly. When the past is dropped, everything is made new. We are reborn in the now. This is what is meant by, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. As it says in the Bible, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. In Revelations, Jesus said, "Behold, I am making all things new." Awakening is not another struggle. It is not a battle with thoughts, not a war against sensations, not a fight with the world. If you go to battle with your mind, you will be fighting forever. It is only the ego that wants to conquer the ego. The battle is perpetuated when attention goes again and again to the naming mind, to language and memory. Attention is pulled by sensations, by preferences of one thing over another, creating a contraction of energy, or inner resistance to what is. Once again, that inner resistance to what is is the I thought. Sadhana is about becoming conscious of what attention is doing. Becoming conscious of how the I thought is tied to attention. Attention is like a camera with a will of its own, or so it seems. One moment it's focused. The next it's ricocheting from sound to image to sensation, pulled by desire and aversion. But who's operating the camera? In Taoism, it is said that the mind's consciousness or attention follows qi or energy, and likewise energy follows the mind's attention or the mind's consciousness. Where attention goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, attention goes. This is the dance of duality, of witness and witnessed, observer and observed. This part of the mind that watches the other mind phenomena is the fifth skandha. Vijnana is the attention faculty or witnessing faculty of the mind that watches the other four skandhas. When attention is entangled with phenomena, there are unconscious patterns of craving and aversion playing out. And I believe that I want this, or I don't want that. It is entangled with the I thought, that bundle of sensations, habits, memories, and preferences that I call me. When attention is entangled, it seeks comfort in familiar patterns. It prefers one sensation over another, one thought over another, one person, one ideology, one flavor of experience. This preference, this push and pull, is the very web of dependent origination. A web with no weaver, no central controller, just a cascade of cause and effect, born of ignorance of our true nature. It seems that there is a chooser, but when seen clearly, what we call choice is just conditioned momentum. A leaf on the wind thinks it's dancing by its own will. At first, meditation is like sitting on the bank of a wild, rushing river. With traditional mindfulness practices, you observe your thoughts, the eddies and currents of the mind swirling by. Some are fast and chaotic, others slow and dreamy. You try not to get caught in the current. At the beginning, you watch, detached, cultivating what you've been told is mindfulness. If we are persistent, then attention becomes disengaged from phenomena as we rest as the witness, resting in the fifth skandha, the witnessing part of the mind. You come back to a meditation object, whether it is the breath, the energy center at the third eye, sensations, or a mantra. You are cultivating sustained attention and equanimity, which brings about a purification of the somatic field and the senses. The practice is to stay on the bank and not get caught in the current. This is the initial preparation for Samadhi. In the Yoga Sutras, it is dharana and dhyana, attention and inner surrender, allowing everything to be as it is. many, this witnessing is already a blessing. Life feels quieter, freer of the storm. Tranquility replaces suffering, and this is no small gift. But even here, conditioning still hums beneath the surface. In the beginning, you are present, until you're not. Attention rests, until it is swept away, lost in thought. The mind pulls you downstream. Over time, with great determination and perseverance, something shifts. When you meditate with your whole being, attention, once scattered, begins to gather. It becomes like a laser, unwavering, like a stream of oil flowing without interruption, without splatter or gap. Patanjali called this the mark of true practice, long, uninterrupted, and full of devotion. In Christianity, we find the same truth, expressed in different language. Jesus said, if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. This is not metaphor. He is describing ekagrata, single-pointed attention. The single eye is attention free of division, free of me and you, no subject and object. In Zen, this is called joriki, the power of sustained collected presence, not pushing away thoughts, not getting caught in thoughts. It is the continuous presence that arises when attention is no longer seduced by the next thought. It is becoming disinterested in thoughts. In your practice, find out if there is an interest in the thoughts. Who is interested in the thoughts? Just see. Just observe the situation. With joriki, you begin to see the mind directly. One way to taste this is to become still as you drift toward sleep. In that liminal space, the edge of waking and dreaming, images begin to arise unbidden. You did not call them, but there they are. These are called hypnagogic images. If you remain conscious as the body slips toward sleep, you can see the mind birthing its world without being pulled into the dream. You are the witness at the gate, watching the magician reveal his tricks. Cultivate this same gaze in meditation. Let the breath be your anchor. Let the meditation object hold you steady, and then look at the mind. Look at the mind and realize the one that is looking. Looking directly at the mind, awaken to your true nature as primordial consciousness. At the beginning of sadhana, there is a turning away from Maya. The ancient call, be still and know. But the egoic mind is clever. It does not surrender easily. It slips into a new disguise. It becomes the policeman of practice, patrolling for thoughts, chasing down sensations, guarding against distraction. It plays the role of the enforcer, pretending to defend awareness, but in truth, protecting itself. For as long as the ego is the guard, stillness becomes a prison. A silence policed, not a silence alive. Zen master Zensho Kop calls this the ghost cave of the dead void. Many get stuck here. It is a peaceful void with few thoughts, but it is not fully alive, not free, not intimate. There is still the duality of observer and observed. It is a relief relative to being identified with the mind. For a while it may feel like peace, but it is a subtle prison. There is a subtle aversion to life, a spiritual bypass. True sadhana begins when the guard is seen for what it is, when the searchlight is switched off, and even the patrolling ceases. Then awareness is no longer enforced. It simply shines, not by control, but by its own nature. Awareness welcomes everything: thoughts, sensations, tears, chaos, not clinging, not pushing away, just open. The witness is still dualistic. It implies two, one who watches and something watched. It is the last veil, the last throne of the ego. It whispers, "I am not the doer, I am the watcher." Who is this I that knows? Question the I. Vijnana again is that part of the mind that is like a camera. But your true nature does not move, does not choose. True awareness is choiceless. What we can call pure awareness, pure consciousness, or primordial consciousness has no quality. It is what remains even when the body-mind drops off. It is that which remains even in deep sleep. It is beingness, or I amness, the background of everything in which the world arises. When it is awake to itself, when you are awake, it is the bliss of the heart. You are that. All pathological thoughts arise due to dukkha, the patterns of craving and aversion, the dissatisfied ego wanting something other than what is. When we no longer give attention to the five skandhas, energy becomes free. Then something new arises. Thoughts arise without a thinker. Movement arises without a mover. This form of thought and movement is mostly unknown in the world. Most people have never had an original thought, a thought that comes not from conditioning in the past, but directly from the one source, born anew in the now. The machinery of mind still runs, wide open, full of energy, but the imagined operator has vanished. The I thought was only that, a thought, a belief, a dream. This is the insight of anatta, the non-dual direct realization of our true nature. Not a concept, not the idea of no self, but the lived non-dual reality. Form is experienced as emptiness. Emptiness is inseparable from form. Quantum physics tells us that until observed, a particle exists in a state of superposition. This is not metaphor. This is physics. The electron is not in a place, but in all possible places, until the observer enters the scene. Likewise, you, before the I thought, before memory and name, exist as the potential of being. Before the mind arises, before any identity is known, you remain in superposition, neither this nor that, both this and that. Awareness prior to collapse. This is not conceptual, but something actual. The awakening of primordial awareness. That which remains when mind and body, or the observer, has dropped off. Ramana Maharshi said, "Investigate this I. Put attention on the sense of I or I amness. At first it will be the false I, but eventually we come to experience awareness, not as an object, not as a thought or concept, but directly." He said one must maintain this vigilance to inquire forever. But it is not a vigilance to do something, but a letting go of interest in Maya. We detach from the objective world by coming to the witness, and then even the witnessing part of the mind drops, and awareness awakens to itself. As Ramana said so beautifully, I have never done any sadhana, and yet his whole life was sadhana. This is the paradox. When Ramana said I, he referred to pure awareness, the groundless ground. Awareness doesn't do sadhana, it simply is. Timeless, silent, still. It doesn't try to awaken, it's always already awake. It is we, the imagined doers, who practice until we disappear. Until awakening is realized, a subtle duality persists. The preference for silence over noise, stillness over movement. Be still and know, the purest pointer, luminous in its simplicity. Yet even this is only the threshold. Be still and know, be in motion and know. After awakening from the current of life, we bring stillness back to life. When there is no more discrimination between this and that, then both stillness and movement drop away, revealing the great reality. Do not cling to the empty, tranquil state. If you resist thoughts, that resistance is the I thought itself. You will fall into an endless game of, I've got it, I'm awake, and now I've lost it. If your awakeness is only available on the meditation cushion or in certain situations, it is not realization of your true nature. If it is an experience that comes and goes, then it is not primordial awareness. At some point, something deeper calls. The river you thought you were watching, it is you. It is life itself. So you let go. You release your grip on the watcher's perch. You stop clinging to the bank, and you let go into the moving stream. This falling is not back into delusion, not a collapse into Maya. It is awakening as the river itself, awakening as what is arising, what Dzogchen calls Rigpa, the pristine awareness beyond observer and observed. At first you awaken from the character, but the deepening of the non-dual state is realizing, I am that too. You realize that what you thought was witnessing was still just another thought. It was separation or the duality of observer and observed. The witness, noble as it was, stood apart from the river. There was still a preference, subtle but palpable, of silence over noise. that preference is the last refuge of the I thought. Where is that witness? Can you find it? The witness is just another belief, another thought. It is just another movement of the mind. The fifth skandha that itself is part of the conditioned mind. Try to find it, and that mind is like a snake going after its own tail. The real self doesn't stand apart. It is the flow, the stillness within the flow, the space in which the river dreams itself into motion. All is allowed to come and go. Even thoughts and words become an expression of the One. They are not an interruption in the silence. It is possible for the silence to speak, for emptiness to dance. In fact, it is always dancing. Every ripple, every wave is your own expression. As the Sufis say, you become the empty cup, then the wine, then the intoxication itself. This is the paradox. The witness is necessary, but it is not the end. To awaken is not merely to observe the river, it is to discover that there was never a river, never a bank, never a witness at all. Only the ineffable current of being, endlessly pouring itself into form. Om is not a sound. It is the absence in which all sounds are born. It is the vibration that precedes form, the emptiness that sings. Omkara, the primal resonance, is not just something to chant. It is the echo of the self before the I thought arises. It is pure potentiality, emptiness dancing. Before I am this, or I want that, there is the unstruck sound, anahata, the soundless sound. Om is not a syllable. It is being, reverberating in space. As Ramana said, Om is the self itself. The conditioned mind still might ask, how do I enter this non-dual space? The little self, the one asking how, is the offering on the altar of presence. There is no way past the gateless gate. Remain in superposition, just being. Realize who or what wants to do something, wants to choose. This is where the alchemy happens. The dissolving of the I thought happens, and non-dual reality will become more and more apparent. This is not waiting. Waiting means you are waiting for something to happen. This is total acceptance, total love of this moment as it is. This is sometimes referred to as the opening of the spiritual heart, awakening of the heart mind or big mind. Let all mind states come and go. Let even Samadhi come and go without attachment, without preference. Whether a state or experience is brought about by techniques, practices, plant medicines, or psychedelics, all that changes belongs to the world of name and form. Even the so often exalted Samadhi states are phenomena. They are temporary manifestations in the objective world. What you are is not a state. Chasing more and more experiences will not lead to realization of your true nature. Who is the knower of all states? Who is simply already here, just aware? If it comes and goes, it is not the true self. Find the one that does not come and go. These are just words, but through deep, continuous self-inquiry, the truth is revealed. Do not mistake intellectual understanding for realization, and do not mistake realization for liberation. Withdraw into yourself, realizing the truth of consciousness. If you do not recognize the truth, act as does the creator of a statue that is to be made beautiful. Michelangelo said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." The sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. Sadhana is not about building something new. It is about removing the layers of false identity. Rumi said, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." You don't need to seek love, or awakening, or liberation. You only need to see the truth. The walls of self-image, the prison of memory, the veil of grasping are like clouds that pass in front of the sun of awareness. Awareness is unaffected. Awareness was never bound. Sadhana is not becoming something, but seeing clearly that the conditioned self, the I thought, made of the 5 skandhas, was never you. Sadhana is the process of becoming conscious of how attention is hijacked. It's the sacred turning of attention away from the 1,000 distractions of form and gently, persistently, toward the formless. This is not about suppressing sensation or denying thought. It is about seeing how attention becomes entangled and recognizing that you, your true nature, are not what attention is focused on, nor the one who focuses. When Ramana Maharshi said, "Put attention on the self," he didn't mean to look for an object called the self, because the moment attention turns inward, it dissolves. It cannot land on anything. The self is not a thing. There is no object. There is no knower of the self. And in that non-finding, the mirror becomes a window. Before awakening, before you know who you are, the mind must give up all knowing and all doing to come to stillness. Stillness is the condition for awakening to happen. After you know who you are, after awakening, it is possible to simply abide as awareness, regardless of whether the mind is busy or still. This form of sadhana, sadhana after awakening, could be called non-dual sadhana. J. Krishnamurti called this choiceless awareness, awareness without a center, without a subject, without a story. Watch attention as it moves. Who is aware of this movement? We're not looking for an answer for the mind, but to allow the question to open a doorway into that which is always here, that which does not move, that which is prior to attention, prior to thought, prior to I. The one mind, undivided, unborn, the ground of being, and that is what sadhana reveals, not by seeking more, but by seeing clearly. When we abide in being, the knot of attention tied to conditioning unravels, and attention dies into its source, over and over. Doing deep sadhana can lead to direct experiences or merging experiences. When resistance ceases, even for a moment, the pattern collapses. The branching dissolves into the root. The lightning returns to the sky. The river returns to the ocean. In Savikalpa Samadhi, Samprajnata Samadhi, or temporary Samadhi, there is a great sense of ease, flow, and connectedness within the self-structure. This is the peak human experience, but it is both a blessing and a curse to have these kinds of merging experiences. If you experience it fully and forget it. The mind will want the experience back, and the seeker will be born. That seeking will go on until awakening, or Kensho has been realized. When contraction returns, when the I thought returns, it is because the vasanas, the conditioned patterns in the unconscious mind, are still active. Mind constantly changes states, from contraction on one end to samadhi on the other. But who is the knower of the entire continuum of changing phenomena? Abide as the knower, as pure awareness. Liberation is knowing yourself as awareness. The more we abide as the self without clinging, the more direct experiences come and go, and the more samadhi states will come and go. When we remain equanimous with everything as it is, just being, the purification of the vasanas will happen automatically, naturally. Understand that the ongoing rewiring of the body-mind can go on for many years, depending on the individual. In non-dual sadhana, there is nothing to do, other than notice the unconscious resistance to what is. Just notice. The direct pointer to your true nature has gone by many names. It has been called the Great Way, or the Great Perfection, Maha Mudra, the Great Mind Seal. It has been called the Secret of Secrets, or the Pointing Out Instruction of Dzogchen, or Prajnaparamita in Buddhism, pointing toward the ultimate wisdom of your true nature. All of these words point to a dropping off of identification with the ego, with the seeker, the doer, and awakening directly to primordial awareness that is ever present. The sage Tilopa points the way. No thought, no reflection, no analysis, no cultivation, no intention. Let it settle itself. This wisdom invites us to see that the knowledge of our true nature is not found by intellect or learning. It is found in the surrender of the mind's need to grasp or control. And it is this letting go of knowing that opens the door to this realization. A beginner's mind, or a don't-know mind. These words carry an invitation to move beyond the mind's endless seeking, beyond its need to categorize and label, and to rest in the simple truth of being. This pointing out is so simple that the mind will always miss it. The truth is found in stillness. The mind is movement. You will never realize stillness by moving the mind. So don't take this as an instruction to do something. It is an invitation to be as you are, dropping all resistance, to surrender the doer, to drop identification with the mind and its pathological seeking and doing. We are so habituated to doing that the mind, in its hurry, may miss this invitation to be still. Listen carefully. I'm going to give you direct pointers to your true nature. This is not an instruction, not information for your mind. It is not instructing your mind to do something. It is an invitation to rest the mind, to drop all doing, and notice the beingness that is already here. There is a dimension of existence that is available here and now. It is present here and now. When I say it is here now, I don't mean to objectify it. It is not an it. This is a limitation of language. Don't mistake my words for what they are pointing to. It is you. Consciousness itself. It is closer to you than your mind, your thoughts. It is the ordinary consciousness that is here now. It is closer than close. And again, language fails. Close implies that there are two. You already are that which the mind was looking for. It is about noticing the consciousness that is already here. It is present here and now. It is presence itself. We miss the direct knowing of our true nature because attention is habituated to being on thoughts and sensations, on the body, its comfort, its beliefs, its knowing. If the sense of who and what I am is with those preferences, perceptions, memories, thoughts, sensations, then there is a sense that I am the character to whom those belong. Remain choicelessly present, lucid, alert, inhabiting the now with all of your being. With a beginner's mind, an open mind, a mind that is intimately experiencing all that is arising, but without preferences, without labeling this or that, without grasping or pushing away. When there is no preference, there is no I thought. Let go of past memories, teachings, and all that resides in the mind. Let go of wanting something in the future. Let go of hope and fear. The truth is, the mind doesn't know what to hope for. True Samadhi can never be remembered. It can only be experienced directly now. Whatever the mind remembers, whatever the mind thinks it wants, Samadhi is not that. Just let what comes, come. Let what goes, go. But who are you that remains? Don't evaluate what is happening now. Let go of all interest in thoughts. Let go of interest in the entire screen or projection of the mind. If there is interest in thoughts, just notice. Who is interested? Just notice. There's no need to try to not think. If you try or believe that you should not think, this is just another thought. Rest, relax, be here, now. The mind can drop the great burden of knowing and of having to do something. Notice how energy flows and circulates freely when there is nothing to do. Notice, whenever the conditioned mind tries to control, to choose, to think, then there is a contraction in the body, and the sense of ease is lost. Notice if the mind is doing anything to try and follow my instructions. I am not giving instructions. No one can instruct you on how to simply be. There is no instruction. You already are. Just notice beingness itself. Notice the I amness that is always already present. The great way is to simply be, which itself is perfect equanimity, neither accepting nor rejecting what is. Abide in this way continuously, in a single pointed, unbroken fashion. There is something that happens when we turn attention continuously away from Maya, and again, Language is not quite right. Awakening is not a happening, but there is a flip of consciousness, a change in the direct knowing of who and what I am. No one can tell you what it is. No one can tell you the truth. You have to directly experience it without using the mind. Abide as I amness, awareness, consciousness. Not a thing, not a thought, not an experience. Allow what is, and eventually you will begin to love the allowing itself. You will realize it as what you are. As you keep attention on beingness continuously, for hours, for days, all that is hidden in the unconscious mind will surface. There may be old emotions that come up, old traumas, fears, sadness, anger, happiness, joy, bliss. Allow everything to come and go without attachment. The greatest mistake, the only mistake, is to try to awaken using the conditioned mind. When the discriminating mind drops, both stillness and movement disappear, and there is only the direct experience of life itself. Another name for the pure consciousness that is looking through your eyes right now is God. God is another word for I amness. What was revealed to Moses was, I am the I am. We abandon that pure, loving awareness to have the experience of the objective world, to have the experience of limitation and of being a separate person. When the I thought is dropped, the individual is free to be its fullest expression, an expression of the divine. When the I thought dissolves, when the energy that once fed the ghost self is no longer being spent chasing pleasure or avoiding pain, something remarkable happens. The real individual begins to emerge. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process by which the self, capital S, is made manifest through the vessel of the individual. Jung knew what the ancients knew, that wholeness is not conformity, not becoming a bland gray monastic, but the integration of all one's parts into the living flame of presence. The paradox is that only by dropping the I do you truly express your unique flowering. It is no longer the conditioned you doing it, the limited you. Life expresses through you. Like a flute no longer blocked by the ego's fingers, music plays. Never before heard, never again repeated. When the character is no longer clinging to the script, the body-mind becomes a direct expression of the mystery. The inner lotus is nourished by the waters of stillness. Attention no longer looped in old grooves can now pour into creative, spontaneous, undivided action. It is becoming more alive than you ever imagined. The opening of the inner cosmos, the Sambhogakaya realms, the luminous archetypal worlds, the radiant body of bliss begin to reveal themselves, not as escape, not as reward, but as the natural next octave when identification falls away. Higher vision, higher intelligence, the voices of angels, guides, the music of the spheres, all become available when the false I stops clogging the channel. The very energy that once fueled thought forms and suffering now fuels beauty, presence, clarity. These are the peak experiences, glimpses of a subtler reality arising like sunlight between clouds. They come, they go. They are not the goal, for even the highest bliss, even the purest vision, arises in the field of Maya. These are the higher levels of the game, more refined, yes, but still part of the dream. The true self remains still. It does not ascend. It does not descend. It simply is. The dream body begins to wake up. Dreams become more awake. The waking world becomes more dreamlike. You may find yourself in chambers of learning, temples without walls, surrounded by symbols, guides, forgotten memories. These are not dreams in the ordinary sense. They are custom-coded transmissions, teachings delivered in the language of your soul, showing you the current situation. Don't cling. Don't try to decode too much. Just bow inwardly and say, "Thank you." In the yogic world, the siddhis are extraordinary abilities or spiritual perfections. Intuition, abilities, mastery over the world of form. These can be byproducts of the pathless path. Once again, not to be chased, not pushed away. At this stage, sadhana becomes a 24-hour flow, not forced, natural. Sleep is not a break from practice. It is an extension of it. Rest becomes transmission. The inner world mirrors the purification of the outer. When this shift begins, it's a sign. The body-mind is ready to receive on higher frequencies. The subconscious is no longer locked in samsaric loops, but begins aligning with a deeper blueprint. You are being rewritten by grace, even in the dark. Eventually, these realms too dissolve into the unfathomable, luminous emptiness. There is an analogy I like to use to explain what sadhana is, and to try to make it clear how it works. This is the VR analogy. Imagine you've been in a VR world so long you forgot it was a simulation. How do you wake up? You forgot the headset. You forgot the room you were in. You think you're the avatar, the character inside the game. You think you are that character, getting older, growing, changing. Your character is living in a certain location, born to a certain family, living out a human life. Your character has a whole script that it has been given. You are totally engaged in the drama, the comedy, the tragedy of this character. You think you're leveling up, developing, evolving. You take damage, you heal, you meditate, you journal, you get therapy, you hear about something called awakening and start doing sadhana in the game. The avatar learns breathwork. It fasts, bends, prays, does shadow work, and yet something feels off, because no matter how much the avatar does sadhana, it never becomes free. That's the cosmic joke. The one doing sadhana was never you. The seeker is part of the dream. The one who's trying is part of the loop. The spiritual identity is just more refined ego. So how do you wake up? Not by upgrading the avatar, not by perfecting the practices, but by seeing the whole thing, the game, the player, the story, the striving, as not you. You realize the programming, the script that the character has been following is not you. That character never awakens. It can't. It is you who awakens from the character. This is the pivot of true sadhana. The game remains as it is. The avatar, the individual, is as it is. But what drops away is identification, the I thought, the delusion that you are that character. The individual or avatar now becomes a vehicle for awakened consciousness, a sacred expression of the One. Stay in this truth, this realization that you are simply aware. Abide as the Self, as the I Am, continuously, single-pointedly, letting energy build. This is the way to hack the game. By discovering that you were actually never in it. Eventually, the consciousness that you are wakes up. The cosmic joke is revealed. You began as a seeker seeking something, a state, an insight, a liberation. But what we found is what no thought can hold and no effort can attain. We found being. And now the question arises, how do I keep this? How do I carry it home into daily life, into the world? Ah, yes. The final trap. The seeker sneaking back in through the back door. The police chief is back. Let this be known. You cannot carry what carries you. You cannot hold what holds everything. You cannot integrate the self. The self is what you are. The wave cannot integrate the ocean. Who wants to integrate the self? All effort to do so is the return of the doer, the dreamer tightening their grip on the dream. So this is the paradox. Integration is not something the character does. Integration is the absence of the character. It is the life that continues when the one who would integrate dissolves in the fire of awareness. Let sadhana continue endlessly, not as striving, but as being. As Ramana says, it is a vigilance that never ends, but not a vigilance to do something. A vigilance to simply abide as the self. As the Zen master Suzuki Roshi said, the main thing is to remember the main thing. In this way, through this vigilance, the remaining vasanas will burn up naturally in the fire of presence, and the tree of life grows during the years ahead. And so, the individual, freed of the old script, returns to the world. They may work, love, stumble, rise. Let the evolution unfold. But something remains forever untouched, that which was never asleep, never bound. There will be days when the sky seems cloudy again, when old stories knock at your door. Let them knock. You don't live there anymore. When thought comes, let it pass like wind across a still lake. When identity arises, smile gently. The play is playing, but you are not the play. So walk back into life not with answers, but with presence. Not with a script, but with the heart and mind of a beginner. Be willing to be no one. Be willing to not know. Be willing to feel life in its fullness, the good and the bad, without labels or evaluation. Be willing to forget everything you think you are, again and again. This is how the integration integrates itself. This is how the transmission continues. Not through memory, but through the clarity of now. As we enter an age of acceleration, where the mirror of AI reflects our collective conditioning at the speed of thought, the importance of sadhana cannot be overestimated. The world will not be saved by systems, not by reconfiguring the same structures built on separation and fear. Consciousness, as long as it is entangled with the I thought, will replicate the virus of division at exponential scale. This is not a time for spiritual entertainment. It is a time for spiritual fire. The solution is not in fixing the machine. It is in remembering who are you before the machine began. The invitation is simple, but not easy. Simply see the seeker and remain as the one who sees. Let the ego walk into the flame. No path, no goal, only the unborn silence that never left.